welcome to part 2 of Chronicles of a Mentally Ill Kid. Thank you for tuning in once again. And so I want to continue my story from part 1 of my video. And I want to actually start back up with the developmental stages of a child. And remember in the first video I talked about how a child go through certain stages of development, and a child's upbringing or experiences shapes him or her development. Their experiences really shape them. It shapes how they think. It shapes how they learn. It shapes what they think about the world. And so we grew up in poverty, and growing up in poverty really does something to somebody, because it causes you to feel as if the world around you is just the world around you. It's exactly what it is, the world around you. There's no hope for you. You're in a pit. You're in a box of isolation. So all you have to do is, get involved in crime, get involved in violence, and be angry at everybody else that's in the same pit you're in. So that's basically the cycle I was in. And then, dealing with the physical, the sexual abuse, and dealing with the rape and the molestation, that played a major role in what happened next in my life. What happens next in my life is very ironic, because you would never, I don't think anybody would never think that they would live a life of mental illness. And mental illness is a very popular disease all around the world. Some people go untreated. Some people are misdiagnosed, and some people are diagnosed. A lot of parents might not understand why their child is behaving, in certain ways. And of course, there is a demonic stronghold to that too as well. We call it mental illness in the world, but the Bible talks about it more extensively in relation to the spiritual aspect of it. But for the purposes of this video, I really want to tag it as a mental illness. If you want to call it the spirit of mental illness, that's fine. But basically, from my childhood, I was developing something that I didn't understand. And so I would cut myself, and I would try to commit suicide. I would take pills. Oh my goodness. At times I would take tons of pills. And I remember specifically taking a whole bottle of E-pills. I'll never forget it. And planned suicide is, is sometimes one of the worst ways to go out, because you are premeditating, that particular behavior, and it is a behavior. And so I remember being in my mom and dad's kitchen, and I took the bottle and I poured it down my throat, and I drank water and I swallowed it. And like a half an hour later, I started throwing up, green stuff, and I was planning just to take it and go to sleep and never wake up again. And this was a moment for me. It was a moment for me because I was going through something I did not understand. I was going through an episode, and mind you, my life was already chaotic. My life was severely chaotic. I dealt with a lot of trauma, and at this time I still was dealing with trauma, from a very abusive, aggressive dad to an unloving mother. And my mother was really never loving towards us. I don't even remember my mom ever telling me she loved me. And to a child, that especially a son, that is very important, because it shapes you in your adult stages when you get married. And we'll go over that some other time in another video. But I just want to give you bits and pieces of my life. And so during this time, I would cut myself. I would try to commit suicide. I was a danger to other people. I mean, I would go out and rob people and hurt people, beat people with bats and chains, and hunt for people in the midnight, hunting for people to beat up, to do something to. And this was a journey, an experience for me, because I could not control it. I did not understand the reason why I was going through it, but I couldn't control it. I didn't want to do it, but I could not control it. And I knew I needed help. I knew this was something that was controlling me, and at that time, I was also going through my family. My dad, just found out my dad was on drugs. I believe I was 10 years old when I first found out, probably was older, that my dad was on drugs. And my mom told me, and when she told me, I was devastated, because I seen God through the eyes of my dad. I seen God through the eyes of my father. And there I was. When I heard about it, I said, you know what, Lord, I don't believe you're real. I began to question God. At that very moment, I questioned God. I never forget, I went in my room and I shut the door and I began to cry, because here it is, my childhood hero. And my dad was already deteriorating mentally. I don't know what he was going through. I didn't know what he was going through at the time. But when I heard that he was on drugs, that devastated me. I changed even more. It was like another layer, off my sanity, per se. And so I changed. I knew that it was over for me. When I found out my father had succumbed to drugs, I knew it was over for me. And at that point, I became very violent towards my family, my sisters, even my mom, and so I planned to murder my whole family and then murder myself. And I went on with that plan. However, it didn't go as planned. I ended up in juvenile prison. What was supposed to be juvenile life from 14 to 18, the 2 years of adult prison, but I only spent 2 years in juvie. I got out, supposedly got saved. I professed Christ at the altar, but the same year I got saved was the same year I ended up in a mental institution on 24/7 surveillance, because I was a danger to myself and others. And at this time, I was very, very sexually driven, and not by women, or not sexually driven towards women, but I was sexually driven towards men. And I would have sex with men. This was my stronghold. This was something that I could not hide from. Now, mind you, I used to beat homosexuals up in high school. I used to beat them up, and what I found out was I was really running away from who I was. I was running away from that. I was trying to hide behind the facade of anger towards them, because there I was, a person who really understood, because of my childhood trauma, being sexually abused and being raped. And so I would fight these feelings. These were feelings that I wrestled with. I wrestled with them. I mean, I could not shake it. And I succumbed to it like my dad succumbed to drugs. And this was very devastating for me, because there I was having to hide, behind a mask. Many people who knew me did not even know that I was going through that. I became a prostitute, if you will. And I would actually, when I was homeless, I would actually give sex for money. And I'll talk about that in my next video. So join me in my journey in my next video, and hopefully I'll see you there. Stories shape our identity and define our reality. Some stories go untold. My story is your story, and your story is my story. Together, let's take a journey and create something beautiful. Purpose is waiting for us.